Hello and welcome to another Satchel Pulse Wellbeing webinar. My name is Jon Tait and I'm your host for this webinar. My day job is I'm the Deputy CEO of Wellbeing Academy Trust up here in North Yorkshire. I am an education author, writer, speaker, podcast host. I've been in teaching for nearly 25 years now, and hopefully I'll be able to bring a lot of that experience in terms of wellbeing activities and things that can support the wellbeing of your staff in your school during this webinar. If you've seen one of our webinars before, you'll be aware that I will go into the Satchel Pulse Wellbeing Tracker. We'll look at some reflective questions that you can ask yourself, you can ask your staff, and you can then think about actually what would our staff say here, and eventually you would use the tracker with your staff. But before that, actually thinking about, are we doing these things? What would our approach be as a team? And how can we kind of put these things in place? And then I will look at giving you two practical ideas and strategies that you can use almost the very next day, and I'll talk you through kind of how to do them, what to avoid, how to take it further, and hopefully you can put those in practice straight away. So the specific kind of area of wellbeing we're going to look at today, and the pillar we're going to look at is career development. And really, really important to think about actually as a leader, how are you developing the staff in your organization? And I know that sometimes we often think that it's a bit of a worry for us to develop our staff so amazingly well, because we then develop them so they move on, and we kind of develop them for the next school that they go on to. But ultimately, and I remember a quote that I've used quite a few times that I learned quite early in my kind of leadership career was that I think it was from David Weston at the Teacher Development Trust, who said that what if we develop our staff and they move on? What if we don't develop them and they stay with us? And that's the scary point, isn't it? That actually we want to have that continuous development of staff, and they get great and they might move on, and we get new staff with fresh ideas and we develop them to be great as well. The last thing we want is people just undeveloped and stale and sitting at your school, and that really unhappy workforce that doesn't really move on and doesn't want to go anywhere or can't go anywhere else. So we need to be quite comfortable that actually we are about developing people in our organization, whether they are 8-year-olds, 15-year-olds, or 35-year-olds who are mid-career as a teacher. We should all be about how we can educate and develop people, irrespective of their age. Okay, let me share my screen and let me dive into the Satchel Pulse Wellbeing Tracker. And if you are familiar with the tracker, you'll be able to see across the middle of the screen there, where my cursor is just circling now, a series of different wellbeing pillars that they talk about. And the one we're going to look at today, as I said, is career development. So I'm just going to click on this one here. Scroll down a little bit and just hit the drop down and click on all questions. Now, if you've seen one of our webinars before, you'll be familiar with the setup of this, or if you use the Satchel Pulse Wellbeing Tracker, you'll also be familiar with this. What we've got here is a series of questions on the left-hand side that staff would be able to kind of take as part of the survey. But we're going to look through the lens of a leader at the moment, and what might our response be, or what do we think the response to the staff would be? What are we doing? What might we want to put in place? And it gives us that reflection activity. So I'm just going to go through some of the questions on the left. When I click on a question on the left, as I've done at the one here, you can see that there are some on the right-hand side. It brings up some things to think about and some reflection points. I'm just going to scroll down a little bit to this one here. Teachers are given the freedom to adapt their teaching to suit the needs of the students. So actually the reflection is there a time and space for teachers to be able to be creative and adapt to the needs of their students? And do teachers have the skills and knowledge to be able to do that effectively? So interestingly the difference there is the question on the left will be the question that teachers would be asked. But the question on the right and the reflection is for you as a leader, actually, are we giving staff the right skills to be able to do this? And are they given the time to kind of be able to think and be creative about that? Or is it a one size kind of fits all? If I go to the next one down, I'm clear what my next career step will be. So interestingly, are there actually some clear pathways for staff within your school or your trust? And are there opportunities for promotion equal for all staff? Are their salary progressions clear with the roles that they do? So lots of things to think about in terms of, does staff see our organisation, our school as somewhere where they can develop, where they can have career aspirations? Or are they thinking, well, there's somebody in a position above me, and there's a clear kind of ceiling where I'm going to have to move on now if I want to develop myself? And that links into the next question there that I've just clicked on, the orange one. I believe I can progress my career here. So are the routes of progression clear to all? Are there easily identifiable staff members who've progressed within the school? So have you got case studies of people that maybe started as kind of NQTs or ECTs as they're known now, in terms of early career teachers, and have actually moved through into middle or senior leadership? Have you got case studies where, you know, that there's a great opportunity for progression within your school, within your trust? And if I just scroll down a bit further, I feel I receive the right resources for my professional development. So does staff engage with professional development well? And is it showing improvements in outcomes? So actually, are they engaging, and is it having a really obvious outcome in terms of what's happening in the classroom? Do they have some choice about the professional development that they take part in, or is it all just a one-size-fits-all model? Do they have that professional autonomy to be able to choose and pick what's related to them, rather than just everyone's going to do this tonight? Because there's never been a school I've ever worked in where everyone needs the same professional development. We're all bespoke and we're all at different areas of our journey. So does staff have the opportunity to choose and to pick that? And actually, does the professional development program support the vision for the school? You know, is it, and actually I always say, is it professional? Is it actually professional? Does it feel professional? Is it great? Is it doing what it should be doing? And then the last one here, my career development is supported. So actually, are we a school that actually is supporting people's career development? Are we making sure that even if we know we're going to lose that person, that actually it's the right thing for us to do, because we're not just going to hold on to them for, you know, to suppress their kind of career ambitions? So are there opportunities, and are there, is there time? The interesting one is the middle bullet point there on the right. Is there time given within the working hours to support further development and career development? Not just you have to do this on your own after school, you've got to do it on a Sunday afternoon. Are we giving time within the actual working environment for people to get better? Because surely that's what we want. We want people to be the best that they can be. We want people to be amazing teachers, amazing leaders. So why don't we actually give time to that? So the question is, are you giving that time? Okay, let me jump into my slideshow. And I said I would have 2 practical strategies for you to take away and for you to use. So the first one is about professional learning for all. And what I mean by this is that we need to make sure we have, you know, high quality professional learning programs for all of our staff, making sure that it's for our teachers as well as our support staff. And we can't expect our teachers to be the best that they can be. We can't expect our students to be the best that they can be if we don't have our teachers being the best that they can be. We've got to make sure that we get the teaching right first, but then for the learning outcomes to follow after that. Fairly straightforward, but lots of schools kind of miss that first part of it, and we just hope that students are going to do well without actually doing the work with the teachers first. But it's got to be accessible to all. You know, it's got to be accessible. It's got to be bespoke, as I said before. It's got to be something that actually everyone's going to get something out of, and not just a one-size-fits-all approach because it feels easier. But easier doesn't mean saying it's any better. So what do we need then? Well, there are lots of different ways to do this now with our digital technology systems. Whether we do it online, whether it's face-to-face, whether it's hybrid, so many different ways to do that. And I'm not going to get into these now because you'll all be well aware of those. But the most important thing is to make it a priority. So whether it's online, whether it's hybrid, whether it's, you know, face-to-face, you just need to make sure it's a priority, that you are prioritizing the development of your staff, because you know that that's the first thing you need to get right in order to get the students' outcomes right. And it's got to be, I said they're the fuel that drives everything else. So it's not just a bolt-on. It's got to be something that actually is the driver for improved outcomes, and not just kind of, oh, well, we have to do this on a one night a week or once a term, so we'll just do it. This is about actually, you know, is this the petrol that you're putting in your car? Is it the thing that's fueling the outcomes? And if it's not, then I think it needs to be. Okay, next thing is what to avoid. I mentioned this a few seconds ago about this tendency to make it a one-size-fits-all, and we'll do this because it's easy and the logistics are easy. Easy doesn't mean better. So actually thinking about how you do this, sometimes that you bring everyone into the hall at 3:30 after a full day, you know, of teaching. Is that really the best time to do it? Have you ever been in a position where you've taught 5 lessons and then you think, well, I'm now ready to learn myself after that? Probably hardly ever. So think about the time that you bring people together. I know it's difficult. I know that it's sometimes the easiest way to do it. But that doesn't mean to say it's effective. It doesn't mean to say it's the best way of doing it. And it doesn't mean to say that it's going to develop anybody at all. So think about how you do that differently. And are there ways to do it, before school or at different points or within different periods, or, there's a multitude of different ways of doing it, rather than dragging everyone all together in the hall after school one day and saying we're now going to be in a right frame of mind to learn, because generally that does not happen. How to take it further then? There's lots of online learning capabilities for staff now, and we can now do things that are live online. We can do things that are on demand so that they're recorded and you can watch them back as many times as you want to. You have a library of things. So there's lots of ways to kind of do that in terms of either face-to-face, online, hybrid, on demand, that kind of synchronous or asynchronous approach that we've seen previously, through various home learning and lockdowns. So there's lots of ways we can do this now. And also thinking about the different ways that you can engage staff. Some people might like to read articles. Some people might like to watch webinars or videos. Some people might like to, to read the very latest kind of educational books, podcasts. There's a variety of ways. So make sure that it's not just how you want to learn, because there's lots of different staff that you're going to be kind of working with. Make sure there's a variety of ways that people can get the same message, so that actually they can take it on board in the medium that they see fit. It might be that, what works for me might be that listening to a podcast in the car where I've got half an hour of kind of dead time where I'm sat behind a wheel and I can't go anywhere, I can't do anything. That might be the perfect time for me to learn. But for somebody else, it might be totally different. So just bear that in mind and make sure you have a range of ways of doing this. Okay, one of these ways then is a professional learning library. This is my second strategy for you to have a look at. So what is it then? Well, it's about kind of extending that development program that we talked about, that kind of professional learning for all, with a staff library containing some of the very latest and best kind of educational titles out there. Now, we know that there's a huge range now of fantastic educational books written by current practitioners. And it's the idea of having a library where staff can kind of go and they can pick and choose the book that they want to. Well, I've seen that. I saw that on Twitter, or I've seen that advertised. Or I really, really like that. Or I'd really like to learn more about this. Give them that opportunity, because when you get to that point where staff are actually wanting to read and choosing things because it's of their interest, it's going to mean far much more to them, rather than you saying you have to do this, or I'm going to bring you to the hall at 4 o'clock tonight to read off a PowerPoint to you. It just doesn't work anymore. So think about how you can do this differently. And it's also great to send that message to staff that we're going to buy the books, we're going to invest in you, and you don't have to shell out your own money to invest in yourself. Actually, we're going to do this for you. So having that kind of subconscious undertone that actually we're going to do this and we'll always invest in your development is a great thing to have in any school. And I think that really, really helps with well-being and understanding that we are looking after you, we're investing in you. So what do we need then? Well, a space, ultimately, a space in a bookcase. Potentially in either the staff room, so it's in people's eye lines and it's easily accessible, or maybe in the school library. And you just kind of fill it with some educational titles. You might want to buy them, buy a load of books. You might want to see if you can get some donated or whatever it is, depending on your school budget. You might just need one copy of each, or you might want to decide you might want to get 4 or 5 copies of a certain book if you know it's popular, or if it's something you want to really focus on, or it's a school priority, or that type of stuff. Rather than just having one copy of it and it never been on the shelf because it's always out, you might decide to get 3 or 4 or 5 copies of a certain book, and that might be really useful for you. What to avoid then? Like anything with this, don't make it compulsory. You might want to really push it. You might want to say it's really important. But if you're telling people they all have to read a book by, half term, or they have to read a book by the end of the term or by the end of the week, it's just going to feel like it's that they're doing it out of fear and out of kind of a tick list, rather than out of their passion for wanting to do it for themselves. So avoid making it mandatory. Have it as something as an extra. Have it as a kind of a nice, desirable, and think of it as something that not everyone's going to engage in, but that lots of people might. And as some people might be listening to the podcast, some people might be watching the videos, some people might be reading the books. As long as you're getting that kind of collective buy-in to the program, then it doesn't really matter how people are buying into it. It's the fact that they are buying in some way and somehow. So just think about that. Don't worry about getting everyone involved in this. The people who want to will really, really enjoy that, and other people, for whatever reason, might not. And finally, then, how to take it further? Well, actually asking staff, for their recommendations. Which books do you want us to fill the shelves with? What have you seen that's that's current and that's out there? Because if you're putting books on the shelves that people already want, then it's going to be more successful, rather than you buying the books that you think people want. Well, actually, that might not be right, and you might not be that accurate. And lastly, maybe even using your existing library and actually using your librarian to actually put the books onto the system properly so that you can track where those books are, so that they suddenly, you don't just fill your shelves and then they all kind of go and you have no idea where those books are, and staff leave and books leave with them and nobody knows where they've gone again. And suddenly you've invested quite a bit of money in there, and then, you know, you're having to replenish the staff kind of library after 6 months because lots of those books have gone missing. So you might want to put them on the system properly. We know where they are, they can be tracked, and we can give people a nudge to say, we know you've had it for 2 weeks now, or 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. Have you finished it? You know, because somebody else wants it. So it's a great way of doing that. And if you've got a staff library, if you've got a library like I know a lot of schools have, then you can add them onto the system very, very easily. Okay, let me stop sharing my screen. Hopefully that's been really useful. Hopefully that's given you 2 concrete ways that you can kind of really expand your the career opportunities and the development for your staff by having a really, really effective professional development program. And some of those things you can start pretty much straight away, and all just thinking about, yes, we might be doing some of that stuff, but are we doing it really well? Is it effective? What else can we add to that? And how can we make it really professional? And that word professional, is it a professional development program? How professional is it? So hopefully that's been useful. Hopefully that's given you lots of things to think about, with your staff, with your school, with your leaders, with your teachers. And if you have found this useful, then we'll hopefully see you at another one of our webinars soon. Okay, thank you.